Welcome to Heart Healing Conversations. I'm Dawn. Here we have the honest, heart centered conversations about life transitions, grief, loss, healing, and finding our way back to joy. If your heart is hurting, if you're caring more than anyone realizes, or if you're simply looking for a place where you don't have to pretend you're okay, you're in the right spot. And I'm so glad you're here. You don't have to have it all figured out, just come as you are. My hope is that these conversations help you feel a little less alone and remind you that healing is possible and that joy can find its way back into your life. Welcome, friends. I'm really happy you're here today. I just kind of want to have a conversation about minimizing grief. I think it's really normal. Most of us do that. We minimize our emotions. But sadly, over time, they can really catch up with us. So our little town and our household is going through something for the past about week and a half. We've had a fire that's close by. And so we're on level 1 evacuation, which means be prepared, get prepared. So we've been going through all of our belongings and deciding what is necessary for us to take with us if we have to leave. And when you do this, as many of you know, you have to think about what are the most important things in case I lose everything. What do I want to have with me? And obviously, you can't take your whole house. So we've been going through our storage unit. We've been going through our house. We've been, on alert, constantly refreshing the app on our computer and our phone that show the fire. Thankfully, things have settled down a little bit, but the fire is still burning. It's only 6% contained. But what we both realized, my husband and I, over the weekend, is how exhausted we feel. Like, we haven't been that busy as far as other things in our life, but what we have been busy with is preparing. And, it's not just physically preparing, it's mentally preparing as well. And so, this weekend we just kind of hit a wall and it was like, I can't do anything today. I'm just so exhausted. And we had realized, especially me, is that I've been holding inside all of these emotions. Fear, fear of the unknown, fear of having to leave our home, what would happen, fear for our friends around the community, some of them who have had to evacuate and are living in trailers. Fear for, nature. It's beautiful where we live. We live in the base of the mountains and we have so many wildlife creatures and streams and lakes and rivers, trees. It's beautiful here. So that fear of uncertainty, all of those emotions that I'd been holding inside just kind of came barreling out. Having been a nurse for 28 years, I learned how to keep my emotions in check. And that's something I want to bring up today, is so many of us in fields that deal with crisis, whether it's healthcare or whether it's law enforcement or firefighting, all of those careers, we learn how to suppress our emotions. Why? Because first of all, we have to keep ourselves safe. Think about law enforcement or the military. You have to keep yourself safe. You have to keep others safe. You don't have time to sit in your emotions when a crisis is occurring. And with healthcare, like if something happened with one of my patients, there was always another patient that needed my care. So I didn't have time to stop and always grieve and allow myself to process my emotions. I had to take care of somebody else. And so that's one of the downfalls of all these careers, is that we stuff that stuff down. And most of the time it never gets looked at again, right? And my heart goes out to the firefighters right now, all the emergency personnel that are in our community. There's over 1,100 trying to fight this fire. And just knowing that this is not an easy job. and they see things that break their hearts. But in order to be effective at their jobs, they've learned how to compartmentalize. They've learned how to suppress their emotions and push them into that little corner of their heart. But as with anybody that does that, they come out in other ways eventually. There's a reason that there's so many addictions in our world today. We're trying to feel better because those emotions don't go away. They pop their little heads out like a shadow every once in a while, saying, "Are you going to deal with me? This was a painful thing you experienced or you witnessed." And so we find ways to numb ourselves, whether it's social media or alcohol or TV, shopping, eating, whatever it is. And wouldn't it be nice if we had other tools to navigate these emotions that come up for us? I was speaking with a woman the other day who was telling me a story about something that had happened in her life. And to me, it felt heartbreaking. And I know it was for her as well, but she's learned to compartmentalize it. And she said to me, "It's just life. It is what it is." And I said, "Well, it is part of your life, but this is an important part of your life. And you have a lot of emotions around this." And that's what so many of us tend to do is we minimize our experience. She started to compare it to things other people have gone through who she knows. And when we do that, we take away from ourselves. We don't know how anybody else feels, but when we compare our experience to someone else's, we don't honor our own experience. And even if we can intellectualize something in our mind, that doesn't mean it helps our heart. Our brain cannot fix the pain, the hurt in our heart. We have to look at those emotions. We have to allow ourselves to not minimize and to be honest about how we're feeling. And as this situation has been happening in our town and around us, and I realized, wow, I have been minimizing how I'm feeling. I also realized that in the middle of a crisis is not always the best time to feel our emotions, right? We have been taught to get through this. However you can, find a way through because you have things you need to deal with right now. But when the immediate crisis is past, when you're coming out on the other side, it's not so acute anymore. That's the time where it is really important to sit with, wow, this has been really scary for me. This has taken a lot out of me. Versus, I'm fine. It's just life. I'm just going to keep moving forward because that's what most of us were taught early in life. It's not easy to sit with those things that are painful. It's not easy to look back at the experiences that have happened in our life that didn't feel good, whether it's from our childhood, whether it's just something that happened the other day. That's not always fun, right? But in order for our hearts to be able to be completely open, we need to be able to process the emotions that are in there. And the fact of the matter is, the more stuff that builds up in our heart, just like our physical heart, the more plaque that builds up, the worse the outcome. The same thing with the emotions that build up, because all those emotions affect every other aspect of our life, right? It's like this backpack, and we're all born with a backpack that's empty, right? But then we get hurt. one rock gets put in the backpack. And every time we experience hurt, another rock goes in the backpack. And so pretty soon, the backpack is so heavy that we can't carry it anymore. And so what happens? We fall down. We get sick. Our relationships start to struggle. Our jobs struggle. We have a hard time keeping our family together and our home. And that's no fault of our own. This is all this unhealed emotional pain that's been kept inside for years. You know, people who've suffered a lot of trauma in childhood often say to me, and I can actually say that I have this experience as well, don't remember much of my childhood. And that's what other people say. I don't remember much of my childhood. I know it was traumatic. I remember certain traumatic experiences, but beyond that, I don't have a lot of memories. Well, why is that? Is because we have a way of protecting ourselves. We shut off those emotions. We shut off those memories, but they don't go away. And many times later in life, they come out. I know this happens to a lot of people, realizing that something very, very painful happened to them and they'd forgotten about it. Because that's what our bodies do. Our body and our mind always tries to protect us in any way. And sometimes it does things to protect us that doesn't make sense. Why can't I remember these things? But we get very overwhelmed when there's so much hurt and pain that we haven't dealt with, right? And so that's why it's really important to be emotionally honest. Because then when things come up in the future, you're not dealing with, I'm still hurting over something that happened 20 years ago, and now I'm afraid today because my house may burn down, right? That's just an example. It's looking at a garden. This is a great analogy. I love this one. Looking at a garden. Now, anybody that loves plants knows that if you have a bunch of weeds, your garden is not going to flourish, right? Because it's taking over. The weeds will go crazy and take over. Same with pain. It takes over our life. It puts this thin layer over everything that doesn't allow us to experience joy. And so, just like the garden, we have to pluck those weeds out. We have to pull that pain out. We have to look at it. We have to process it. We need tools to help us process that so we can move forward. Because if we ignore it, that pain will take over. Those weeds will take over. And there won't be the beauty and joy in our life that we deserve, that we desire. So, back to this week, I realized that there was a lot I was keeping inside just during this fire and not processing. And so I started looking at that, the fears that were coming up. Because I was feeling a lot of tense feelings inside. I was noticing that I was getting a little snappy with my husband. I didn't want to do that. And so once I was able to talk about what was going on inside and allow those emotions to flow, I started sleeping better. I felt mentally more clear. Emotionally, I didn't feel so bogged down. And my heart felt more open. So that's what I mean is when we have these things that come up and when we try to pretend that we're not feeling emotions that we are feeling, it affects every aspect of our lives. It's okay to feel. So many of us were taught that feelings are not okay, that we should just plow through life and be strong, and that we are too sensitive if we allow ourselves to feel. That is absolutely not correct. You're not too sensitive. We weren't meant to be robots without feelings. We are meant to experience the full range of emotions in our life. And the truth is that if we don't allow ourselves to feel the painful feelings, we can't feel the joyful ones. Because once we turn off our feelings and stifle them, we turn them all off. We can't have one without the other. And so it's just an important reminder to all of us to allow ourselves to feel, even when it doesn't feel good. Because when we allow our emotions to flow, we can move through them and we can find our way out to the other side and experience joy again. And we are no longer minimizing our experience. Because every experience you have in life is important to you. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It doesn't matter what anybody else has been through. I want you to honor you today. Can you do that? Please. We're so hard on ourselves. We try to just keep moving forward and be strong and, live up to others' expectations and our own expectations. But how about just being human? Like I said, you're not a robot. You're a human. So being human means allowing yourself to feel, honoring your emotions, loving yourself, being gentle with you, right? So that's my message for today. Be human. All right, my friends, thank you for listening this week to another episode of Heart Healing Conversations. I have an exciting episode coming out next week, so stay tuned. And remember, you're never alone. You can always reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation with you. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone else. And let's support one another. Let's put community and love and kindness, compassion around everyone these days. Thank you for sharing in that journey with me. Take care, friends.